Our grooming channel. My name is Melanie Newman, and this is the
Hi.
amazing Janelle Austin. For people that are new to our channel or older to our channel, welcome. And Janelle will be joining us every week.
Talk about different subjects,
topics, lots of different things. So today's topic is grooming tools. So I'm huge on grooming tools, and I don't know about you, but when I teach, the first thing I do is go through everybody's grooming bag and see what they're using.
All the time.
Because usually, well, I know I do this. If I see a orange comb or a pink comb or a pink pair of scissors, or
it's like, where'd you get those from?
Yeah, and
why don't I have one of them?
And it used to be that no matter what the function of the tool was, I would have to get that tool, and I would only get it just because of the look of that tool. But then I started to have the same comb and
over and over.
Yeah, over and over. A pair of scissors that I purchased. Do you remember the Kenchi Pink Poodle scissors? Yeah.
Yes. I think everyone had Kenchi Pink Poodles.
They were amazing. So they were pink, these pink poodle scissors, and they had poodles pattern all over them. They were the most beautiful things. But I have little hands, so those scissors I hardly use because I couldn't. They were too big for my hand, and I just couldn't control them when I was scissoring. And I think they were like a 9-inch
or 9.5 inch.
Yeah, and I only use 7 to 8.5-inch scissors. So I only have little dogs, which one's behind me. So I always try and guide people on the right track when they're looking at grooming equipment and what they need, because there's functions for all different tools.
There's many different types of brushes, many different types of combs, many different types of de-shedding tools. So they all have their own
functions. Functions and needs. So every slicker has a different function as well. So there's not just one slicker anymore. There's lots of different slickers. So when people are looking at new equipment, I always say to them, what do you need? What sort of dogs are you mostly grooming? What sort of breed do you have? Because there's no point getting one particular brush that's more suited for a gun dog type coat when they might have
a poodle,
a Bichon or a Cavoodle. So I always like to advise people on the correct tools for that particular breed. So that's what we're going to do today, is go through a lot of different equipment that we have on the table over there, and just go through some different functions of different slickers, different combs. Like how many different combs is it?
So many different combs, and a lot of people get confused with the combs and when's best to use them, each one. So I think that's going to be helpful for many people out there, and we'll talk about the functions of each type of comb.
Yep, and pin brushes. I use pin brushes a lot. Do you use pin brushes?
Yeah. Definitely with the gun dogs, always a pin brush.
Yeah, I go through a lot of pin brushes. And we'll look at de-shedding tools. We'll look at hand stripping tools, stripping knives, the functions, and we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. So
if you guys have any questions or any comments, we've got the iPad here. Oh, we've got some on at the moment. Please feel free to send through a question. I've got it right here, and we'll be able to answer it the best we can. If not, we can come back to you once we find out the answer. So any questions welcome. So let us know.
Yeah, and I just see Jen said hi. Yeah. Hi, Jen. So sorry. I'll get back to your text. I know that you text me today. So sorry.
Superstars, I don't know. But we're getting there.
I think she's talking about Dash.
Yeah, maybe Dash. And Shelby. Shelby is back with us again today, and Dash is joining us as well. So, yeah.
Okay, so we will move over to our grooming table that's got lots of different equipment, and I'll pop Dash up on the grooming table as well, because we'll be able to go through his coat with the different tools as well as Shelby's coat. We did a little bit of work on Shelby last week, so
she shouldn't have as much hair, but we can still definitely show you the techniques that we use for the tools that are good for a short double coat.
All right, we're going to move over.
Hey, Shayla. You want to take them?
Sure.
Just waiting for some cameras to be set up, guys. We've got some comments that we need to delete. There we go.
Okie dokie. So I've got Dash on the table at the moment. I haven't, I think the last time I washed and brushed Dash was last week.
Last week, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, actually the
week before.
The week before.
I just thought the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, was it the week before?
Yeah, the weeks are getting away from us. So I was feeling the top of his head has a little mat here. His legs, he can smell lots of different smells on the table. His legs have lots of little knots as well. So this will be really good when we're looking at different slickers as we're going through them. So the first slicker I wanted to talk about was the yes, a flexi. This is a flexi slicker. This is one of my favorite slickers, and this is a slicker that I recommend a lot to pet owners.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot softer.
It is a lot softer, and it is quite gentle on dogs' coat and their skin as well. So we can see the flexibility in that head, and it also has a firm side as well as a soft side. I would probably use this slicker on nearly every dog.
Yeah.
And the second slicker I'm going to talk about is a slicker that has protective pins.
Maybe I'll get closer.
Yeah, I'll see if Janelle can
get some focus
a little bit, not really.
Yeah, maybe Paul can, the cameraman can help us there. There we go. You can see the soft pin balls on the edge of the pins there.
So these two slickers I really prefer for puppies, for dogs that are just getting introduced to grooming. I really love them, especially the protective pin slicker. And the thing that I like about both of these slickers is that the pins are quite close together. So when the slicker is going through the coat, it actually separates the hair really well. So we're just going in a bit.
Yeah, that's probably better now. Yeah.
Then we can see how close the pins are together, and then compared to this slicker here.
The universal.
The universal, which we'll go through a bit later. So I'm going to begin with our tipped, with the tips on our slicker, and just gently go through Dash's coat. And I must say, my friend Miranda loves and swears by these slickers.
The poodles, yeah.
Yeah, loves them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it is really gentle on their skin as well as on their coat. So, and it does remove quite a bit of hair, as you can see. So any of that dead coat, and we can see. So it is removing that dead hair. So both of these slickers, when we are looking at the pins, they are quite flexible. So when they're going through the coat, there's a bit of movement as I'm working the slicker up and down through that hair. So we can actually feel, and if I press lightly on the slicker, you can feel, or you can see how soft they actually are and how flexible the pins are, which I personally love. So these are really good for beginners. I'm referring to clients, puppies. Even if you've got an elderly dog, the protective pin is perfect. And then we will move into our universal slicker. And I've got two sorts here. So we can have a look at how thick the pins are compared to our flexi slicker. So these, I would say, are more your workhorse slicker. And we can see on all the slickers as well is that they come up on an angle and then curve up around. So when they're going through the coat, they're really going through and pulling and moving through the coat.
And separating the coat.
Yeah, separating. So we can see how thick the pins are through that slicker. Now both of these slickers are very, very similar, but we can see how one of the larger pins and they're longer in the bigger slicker. And they both have a curved body, and which makes it easier for when we do go through their coats. And there we can see that. Now the difference is if you have a dog that has a lot of hair, you would use the long pin slicker. If you have a dog that has a shorter coat, then you would use a shorter pin slicker. I prefer the shorter pin, but if I had bigger breeds, I would probably use the longer pin.
Yeah.
Something else I was going to say as well, when we're using our slicker, the part that we're mostly going to be using is this part, and this is called the heart of the slicker. So if your slicker's getting worn down, it should be around this area here. And if we just move Dash up, actually I'm going to use some coat conditioning spray on him so I'm just going to spray a bit of the Relax coat conditioning spray in his coat, and then we can see how the universal straight away takes out any little knots and tangles. So it is a real workhorse of a slicker. Now, because the pins, they're not as flexible and they don't move as much as the flexi slicker or the tip slicker, they are a lot firmer. So I feel like when you're using this slicker that you do need to take care when you're going through the coat, and you need to take care of the dog's skin and making sure you don't go over the same area too much, because this can then cause brush burn in the dog's skin. And I see it a lot.
Yeah, you don't want to put too much pressure onto the dog's leg that you're scraping across the skin, and move it along as you go.
I like to groom in sections, so 1 section, 2 section, 3 section. I find this the easiest way to make sure I've got all the little hairs and any dead coat that needs to come out. And I'm not moving the slicker sideways, so I'm actually brushing as the slicker's designed. So especially with the universal, as I'm going through the coat, I'm coming back up. And I'm not twisting my wrist too much. I'm just using the curve in that slicker to brush through that coat.
Going to sleep.
Yeah, he would love it because he hasn't been brushed for a couple of weeks now. So I'm hitting a bit of a snag with a knot in this area. So just going to use a coat conditioning spray to gently go through that coat and then go through with the slicker. And then we go. So we can see how much hair this slicker's removed. So this is, I would say, even it's quite aggressive compared to our flexi slicker. So
dogs that you probably want to keep some coat in, you probably wouldn't go your universal, you'd want to go your flexi, because your universal is going to drag more coat out than what your flexi is. So if you're trying to keep coat there, go a flexi slicker over your universal.
So for example, I wouldn't use the universal on Dash's head or his crest, because I like as much hair as I can possibly get, and he rubs his head constantly, so
we want to keep as much in there as possible.
Because he's always in dirt and all sorts of things. So that's two sort of types of slickers, going from one extreme to the other. And then I think a lot of people would know these slickers. So
I think that's the one that everyone starts off with.
Yeah, and these are a great slicker as well, because they have like a thinner pin and they're really close together, so they will definitely separate the coat. But if you have a heavy coated dog, such as a Pomeranian, I would definitely go a longer pin, the universal, or even I find the flexi, the pins are a little bit longer as well than our soft. I think this is called a soft slicker, and you can see that as it goes through the coat, it is separating, but it would take a lot more work for me to brush out any knots and tangles through that coat. But it is a great all-rounder slicker. We can just go through that, and we can see it doesn't take out as much hair as our universal. Compared to this was a universal and this was a soft slicker, so a universal will remove a lot more coat. And then I just wanted to quickly show, I think it was this slicker. I'm obsessed with this slicker. I absolutely love it. The pins are quite long and they do have that nice turn in them, so they are going to really separate the coat, but they are really fine and really close together. So we can see as I turn it that you can actually see how fine the pins are. So I really like this slicker on puppies in particular, because they are quite flexible, the pins. And if I'm going to go through and I really want to separate the coat, so just moving that through. But if I hit knots and tangles, I'm definitely not going to start trying to remove knots and tangles with this slicker, and the reason is because the pins are too close together. And for me, this slicker is only for separating the coat and fluffing up that coat. So if I hit any knots and tangles, I'm definitely going to use my universal slicker just to brush out any knots. And then I would go through with my double-sided slicker. Do you like these slickers?
I love those slickers. They're fantastic. They get they're a bit different to use when you first use them.
They are a bit different because you have to flip them so as you're brushing down, but then to go up, you need to flip it around. So down and then flip up. Do we have questions?
We have got a question. So we've got a question from Kelly, and she's asking, what is the point? When is the point you quit brushing and use a blade? Like, I guess
if the dogs
start to get matted, and
if the dog's got too many knots, I would say if the mats are too tight and too close together and you can't really separate them, I kind of feel knots. So if I'm grooming a dog that I think's got a lot of knots, I'll kind of feel it, and then I like to see if it separates first with my finger, and I like to look at the base of that knot. And I know that sounds really strange, because what happens with a knot or a mat is when you wash that knot, it gets worse and more hair goes into that knot and that mat, and then all of a sudden the knot and that mat is really close to the skin, and that's when it can be a little bit dangerous, because if you're trying to brush out or remove that mat that's so close, then when you're using a slicker, it can cause brush burn and can irritate the skin, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to irritate the skin at all.
Yeah, you just want to keep an eye on it. If you find that the mat is sitting really close to the skin, you can sometimes work it out as long as you're lifting it up. Once it gets really deep into the skin, I think that might be a bit of a indication whether to take it out, to clip it off or not. A lot of mats are caused from either dirt, debris, dead hair not being brushed out and removed. So if we stay on top of our brushing routines,
because our healthy hair, and a lot of people don't realize this, is that healthy hair is a really strong, shiny hair that's going to stay in that dog's coat. All this hair here is dead undercoat that needs to be removed, that is causing the knots and the tangles. And you can see that it's causing knots and tangles, and the healthy hair in him is not matted at all, or not. He's not matted, but he's got little knots and tangles. So a lot of people don't realize that. So it's a good idea. And when I'm looking at a dog that has knots, I have a look at how much dead hair is actually in those mats as well.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you haven't brushed your dog for like a good month to 2 months, I would say
then that hair hasn't been that dead hair that needs to be removed is sitting in there and getting more knotty. I guess
more
knottier
and more,
and knottier.
Yeah, it just keeps building up, because every time the hair is shedding, it's not getting brushed out, and it's just actually sitting in the knot and making it worse and worse. So I guess you really need to have a look at how the knot is forming, and then just get your slicker. And I always start with a softer slicker, and I'll always just have a look at how the knot is separating, and if it is separating, and then it's happy days. But if it's not separating, then
you can use your fingers as well. Feel in there, see if it will separate with your fingers, and then see if you can get a slicker running through that and separating the coat. Once you've separated your coat with the slicker, see if you can get we'll talk about them. But there's some mat breakers that we'll talk about that will help separate your knots, as long as it's not too big. If it's too big, that can cause a bit of pain.
And you know what, we don't want our dogs to be uncomfortable. So if you do have a dog that is really not enjoying the grooming process, I don't like to punish dogs for being groomed. I don't believe that dogs should be punished. And if your dog is more comfortable with being clipped down, clip them down, get them clipped, and then start again. And then just start with the slicker with the protective tips, because it's not going to hurt your dog, and you just need to do 5 to 10 minutes. If your dog only lets you do 2 minutes, I'm like, just let him do 2 minutes. So 2 minutes is better than none. So starting again and re-teaching your dog how to enjoy the slicker. Like Dash quite likes it.
He'll fall asleep in your hand.
But in saying that, he, as a baby, and I had him from a baby, he didn't like it. He used to scream and carry on. I don't want to do this. But you do have to teach him that it is a part of their day-to-day or every week.
A couple of days a week.
And this is what we spoke about last week, is that you need to take your dog to a grooming area. So there's no point in grooming your dog on the couch, because that's where you like to relax. So I always say to people that you need to take your dog to the grooming area, whether it's in the laundry, it might be on a floor, on a mat, it might be on a table, because then you will start to communicate to your dog that that's about to happen.
We're about to have our grooming time. So the other question that Kelly just had, she's saying, so recommend the Flexi Slicker for owners. So I'm guessing maybe, I can't tell from your profile picture, depending on the breeder dog, really, but generally the Flexi Slicker we would recommend for your puppies.
It's a good all-rounder type slicker, and it does go over muscles, legs,
softly,
because it does.
It moves with the body
of
the dog.
That's what I was trying to say.
It
does
move as you're going through. It will move over the dog's body and over its lumps and bumps and its bones and all types.
So one thing I just wanted to say about slickers is they do have a lifespan. So do not hang on to your slickers.
I know how many I have hung on to them sometimes too long, and I'm like, oh, it's time for it to go.
And Adam, if you're listening, I hope you've thrown out that slicker.
Do you have one?
Oh yeah. So if your slicker the pins are starting to be a little bit more damaged, so they're not straight in their line.
Can we maybe get a close up on
there we go. So I don't know if you can see, but the pins are a little bit damaged and they're kind of going over each other and intertwining, and they're just not in a good place. If I try and pull this through Dash's coat and work through, not only is it going to take me longer to groom out any little knots and tangles, any dead hair, it's actually going to pull on other bits of hair and it might cause a lot of discomfort to him. So I always recommend watching what your pins are doing on your slicker, because if they're bent or the pins are starting to go the opposite direction, get a new slicker. Yeah. Definitely get a new slicker. And they do break off as well. So if you've got like a heavy coated dog, they can
break off into the dog's coat and without you even noticing, and you could leave it in there and find it on the next brush.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true.
You got to be really careful with that sort of thing.
So everybody have a look at their slickers and keep them nice and clean and tidy and hair free. So I don't know if you've noticed, but as I'm brushing, I'm always cleaning out the slicker. So what can happen is if I keep going through Dash's coat and removing all this dead hair, and see how it's building up in the coat, as our slicker begins to get more and more hair, so there's more and more build up, it'll keep building up, and not only will it lose a function and it takes me twice as long, that dead hair will then catch on the live hair and the healthy hair, and what it'll actually do is cause pain as well. So I always say to groomers and pet owners to always make sure clean out. And it's funny because if I go into someone's salon, if I'm teaching, I just automatically go through all their slickers and remove all the hair.
Yeah.
Because
I used to do that all the time, and people that have worked with me would know that was one. Taking hair off and everything.
Yeah, so I always do that. So did you want to go through combs, Janelle?
We can. So we've got one more question just on that Equi Groom. We did actually have a look at it.
Yes.
The Equi Groomer, is that what it's called?
Yeah. So that is definitely a de-shedding tool.
Yes.
So, and that would work on Labradors, short-coated dogs, staffies.
Yeah. It was a rubber type.
Yeah.
Frenchies.
Frenchies.
I would say maybe.
Yeah. And it looked amazing when I looked it up. It was quite addictive. So as a groomer, I love watching dog hair being removed and any type of hair on animals being removed. So it was on a horse.
We haven't used one personally, but I think they're very similar to...
They would be, yeah. And I would imagine that they work really well on the wet coat.
Short undercoat.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Combs.
I love combs. I probably buy more combs than I buy scissors.
Yeah, you do buy scissors. I'm not complaining. There's a way to go through and have a bit of a practice with. Yeah.
Combs.
We'll just make sure that Shelby doesn't knock everything she's going through.
Okie dokie. So there is combs for every single breed, every single coat type, different functions for top knots, for...
I've got many different types of combs. I think I've got one of every one of these.
So this comb, I know a lot of groomers who have these. and I love these combs. These are a good all-rounder. So even if you're working on a smaller breed or a larger breed, because I feel like with the smaller breed I can still get in there and I know but I can still go in there with this part of the comb and maneuver this part, or if I've got a large breed I can go right through that coat.
Definitely.
And we can see with the pins,
if we get a close-up on that one. There we go.
So the pins are quite thick and they're not close together. So what that means is when we're going through the coat that the comb is going to go right down to the skin. So I love these combs on like double coated breeds.
Yeah, I think I use them on pretty much anything that comes into the salon. Probably not to finish with, but definitely to go through and I would finish with it, but definitely go through it. It's a all-rounder comb, I guess. And with the two different lengths, two different widths, you can see here how it's got the finer width. Oh, that's funny going on reverse. The finer width between the teeth, and then we've got the wide. So yeah, I definitely use the finer ones on those smaller dogs.
And they're really good for
the whiskers.
For
the muzzle.
Yeah, for their little whiskers. And then we can go through just with the finer tip.
There we go. That's
through his little whiskers.
And that's going to get out the real fine knots. I guess that's going to lead on to the next thing.
Yes. So I'm going to go to the complete opposite side of the combs and look at this little cutie patootie here.
It's cutie patootie.
I love these combs on babies, on like short-coated breeds, on whiskers, on toes, ears, everything. The difference is between these two combs is of course length, but is the length, but you can see the length of the teeth are different. So these are longer and this one is shorter, which is probably a no-brainer. But when you're deciding on what comb to get, has your dog got long hair or has it got short hair?
Yeah.
Is it a larger breed or a smaller
breed?
Yeah. So that's sort of the ins and outs of these two combs, the complete opposite. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, definitely. So definitely, like, you can kind of measure your dog's coat. If your dog's coat is quite long, we're going to go in front of the camera so you can actually see. This is going to get a lot deeper down into your dog's coat than what this one is. Right, but if you've got a dog that's only got quite a short coat, that's going to get right down into...
Yeah, and we can see with Dash, like it would take me a lot longer because the pins are a lot shorter to go through his coat because he has got quite long hair. But one of my poodles at home, her hair is really short, so I would only use a smaller comb. So again, if you're deciding between combs, have a look at how long your dog's coat is and what you actually need it for. I mean, your dog might be clipped down all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my dogs, like
four blade.
Yeah, I prefer her short. She's happier short, so I always clip her down, and I always use
the small comb through her.
The small comb, yeah. So this comb. Half. I really like this comb. This is a good all-rounder as well. And again, the pins have length to them. So most of the dogs I groom have quite long hair. So it's really great for really getting in there and lifting up the coat.
Yeah. Once you've gone through with your slicker, so a lot of people will like to use the wider tooth on this side and then go through with your wide tooth width. It's a hard one, that one. Go through with the wider width and then change it up and then go through with your fine tooth side.
So if you've got a dog that has long hair, this is definitely a go-to, something that has a bit more length to the tooth, and it's not as long as our workhorse slicker. So when I go through, I can really go through. He's got a few knots and tangles. So I can really go through and pull any knots and tangles. Well, I don't really pull out any knots.
Yeah.
What am I talking about? So it really goes right down to the base of the coat. That's what I'm trying to say, because I never remove knots with a comb. And then we have these little guys. I use these a lot as well because they are a medium-sized comb. And we can see the difference. They have the same length as these guys, but the teeth are a lot shorter. Oh. So very similar.
You can kind of see how short they are compared to that one.
Okay, so now we're going to have a look at a fine tooth comb. A fine tooth comb. So these combs, these are amazing. So if we're looking at a fine tooth, I would say a fine tooth is compared to our double-sided slicker because the pins are really fine with this little guy, as well as our fine tooth comb. If we have a look at this,
might be able to get it close. Not yet.
If we have a look at this comb here, our workhorse, so this is our first comb, compared to our fine tooth comb, and I'm going to get...
We're going to get some close.
There we go. So there's our fine tooth comb, and then this is our workhorse comb, and we can see the difference in there. So we can see how thin these pins are, and these are quite flexible. So when I move the pins, they actually move compared to... You won't be able to twist. You can't move our large comb.
Workhorse
the purpose of a fine tooth comb is to separate and lift the hair. So if I'm going through Dash's coat, and I'll get Core to go back to this camera one. If I go through Dash's coat, and I'll do his back leg because I know that I've groomed out all the little knots, I can really go through with this fine tooth comb and it separates all those little hairs. And this is perfect for if you're hand scissoring a breed, because it does lift at the same time. So my pet hate is when I see a fine tooth comb where the pins are, one pin's up here, another pin's out there, it's missing pins. Missing pins. Combs are not made to demat coat at all. So if you have combs that are missing pins, or pins are going everywhere, that means that you're not using your slicker correctly or your dematting tools correctly, because you're trying to demat with a comb. A comb is not a dematting tool. A comb is there to separate the coat and lift the coat. So what I mean by lift the coat is, so as I'm going through Dash's coat, stand up, buddy. And then you can see it lifting, like the comb is going through the coat, but it's actually lifting the coat as we go. If I hit an area where the comb will not go through, I'm not then going to separate the hair and then just gently go through like this, because the comb, that's not what it's... It will damage the comb. It'll damage the comb, and it will actually start to break coat on Dash. I will then go through with my slicker, separate the hair, remove any dead hairs, making sure it's nice and separated, and then I would go through with my comb. So if we snag any knots, we would definitely not pull this comb through. We would remove the comb and then go through with the appropriate tool. And
the comb is really your finish. You the thing you use at the end, and when you hand scissoring the dog, it's going to pull every little bit of hair out. So a lot of people do ask us about how do you get that beautiful finish on your dogs when we're scissoring.
Yeah.
It is pulling that coat out with your fine tooth comb.
Yeah.
And lifting the coat and scissoring those fine bits off.
And one thing I will say about a fine tooth comb is that the pins do taper towards the tip, so it will go straight down to the base of the coat and lift. So that's what it's designed to do. And I think that's a bit of a lesson with other combs as well, because some combs go straight down. So if we look at our workhorse comb, the pins, they taper a little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So to me, it's going to go to the base of the coat, but not as much as our fine tooth or this comb here. So this one is I really love this on my poodles.
Poodle, yeah. It's referred to a lot as a poodle comb.
Yeah, because the pins are nice and separated, so it is going to go through any coat and lift it straight away. And the pins do taper towards the tip as well.
Yeah.
But again, I would use this as more of a finishing along with our fine tooth comb rather than our workhorse. So I hope the combs really make sense. But
we do have a comment there. How many times do we get stabbed underneath the fingernail? Oh my God, that is very painful.
That is very painful. I have really bad nails and hands, so I have fake nails because I can't handle nails breaking all the time from our hands being in the water and things like that.
The slicker brush can get under your fingernail too. Oh God,
yeah, torture.
Just breathe, hold it, breathe, and
yeah,
continue.
just breathe through it. Yeah. We can do it. One thing I'll quickly say about combs is that replace them when pins are going everywhere, because that means they're old. If they're missing pins, replace them. If they get rusty, I found this one in one of my old grooming bags. It's quite rusty towards the bone of the comb. So if this is the case, do not use it on a dog or your dog. I'll just throw this out. I won't even use it. It's gone. It's gone. It's gone along with the pins, the slicker where the pins are damaged as well. So definitely keep an eye on your equipment and keep it nice and clean and in a dry area. You're right, buddy.
Yes, falling asleep.
Yeah, in a dry area as well, because sometimes with the rain and like any
moisture in the drying room, sometimes you got to be careful. Make sure that you're looking after your tools and they're not rusting away with the moisture of your dryers and in your bathing room. Yeah.
So when you're looking at purchasing a comb, have a look at what breed do I have. Do I have a dog that has a heavy coat? Does it shed a lot? Do I have a dog that has a single coat? Do I have a Yorkie?
Yeah.
Do I have a Bichon? Have a look at the coat that your breed has. You might have a little crossbreed dog that has a really tight curly coat. You might have a crossbreed that has more of a single coat or a flat coat.
Yeah.
So have a look at the particular coat your dog has and decide on a comb that is suitable for your dog, because say a little Yorkie isn't going to be suited to our so-called poodle comb. So you can sort of
not worry about
that one. So it would be more suited to something like this, or if it's longer, something like this. I wouldn't necessarily
use a fine.
I wouldn't use a fine tooth, because with the Yorkie we're trying to save hair. I would use a pin brush, but
all the way.
But if you are looking at combs, definitely what do I need? What do I want? So definitely talk to your groomer or
the breeder
or
anyone that's
or your grooming supplies as well, because there's always new combs, new technology, new material. I've got combs that are like made out of carbon material, and they're really great. So so definitely decide what comb you want. Don't buy it for the color like what I used to do. Definitely buy it for its form and its function. Okay, combs.
That was good.
All right.
Questions? Keep the questions coming, guys. That would be fantastic.
So de-shedding.
We'll go on de-shedding. De-shedding or
de-matting? De-shedding.
De-shedding. So there's many types of de-shedding tools also.
Coming up.
Yeah, they're all coming. They're all coming up now. So we'll go through the rakes first, I think. That is a bit of a break. He's having a sleep.
He's having a rest.
A little nana nap.
Okay.
Microphone. Yeah. So these are your rakes. There's a few different types. You can see here, this one here it's got the 2 different lengths in the teeth. Yep. It's also got a rotating tooth, right? So that means that the pins on your rake is actually turning. You wouldn't be able to see this, but I can turn it with my fingers and I'm running it over the rake. So what this does help with is when you're pulling it through your dog's coat, these are really good for golden retrievers.
Yeah, your heavy coated breeds.
Yeah, Samoyeds, Japanese Spits, those sort of things,
yeah.
I feel.
I was always not a fan of the rotating pin. Yeah. I didn't quite understand it.
Yeah.
And it would kind of annoy me. The noise, it's a bit squeaky.
Yeah, it is very squeaky. Oh, it's probably coming through their microphones now as I'm playing with it.
Yeah.
But what it's meant to do is it's meant to help go through the actual coat, right? So it's meant to be easier. So if you've got a lot of dead undercoat, or dead coat, I should say, stuck into that dog, what you can do, just run it through slowly, gently,
and I like to just gently tease it out. So you're not quickly pulling it through. You need to work it through and just gently work it towards the ends of the hair.
And you'll see, as you're going through, you'll see that fluffy, dull coat working its way out. So some people like the rotation on the teeth. I'm kind of with Mel. I kind of, I found it a bit different.
I didn't understand it. So, but I do like a shorter and a longer pin.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the shorter pins can actually get the different types of hair than the longer pins.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then you got your. Oh, we're going back to this camera. Sorry. We got your rake where. This is your working horse rake, I feel.
I really like this because they do taper towards the tip. So again, when we were talking about our combs, that those tips, those pins in this rake are really going to penetrate down to that build-up of hair and start to remove it. But with this, you do need to be careful that you're not damaging the skin and being really gentle as you use it. Compared to this one, these are quite blunt, whereas I feel like this is quite sharp.
With the tapered tips, that's definitely going to be a bit sharper. And you just want to be careful of the pressure that you use, especially when using any brush really, or anything that you're going through. You want to use a gentle hand rather than really
going gung-ho and trying to remove as much coat as you can. It's just a gentle movement and just working through that area.
Yeah. So that's the 2 rakes. You can get these these rakes here do come in a longer pin as well.
Yeah.
A longer tooth, depending on what you want to call it. So, and that also depends on the length of the dog's coat. I feel like if you got a really long, heavy double coat, Newfoundland. I'm trying to think of the breeds now.
I don't mind these on like Cavalier type.
Oh, definitely with the smaller teeth.
Yeah.
And then when you got the longer teeth that you can get right down deep.
I feel like some dogs actually like it because it's like a bit of a scratch as
it feels nice
as it's going down their back.
Yeah. Definitely, you can feel.
They're like, oh, I like that.
So they're the 2 types of rakes that we've got here. Now, these guys, these ones here are your super coat rakes. So they're coming. There's a few different ones that you can get. I don't know if you can. Yeah, thanks, Cool. So these ones here, depending on how many teeth, will depend on how wide it is. You've got your smaller ones here, so you can see here. Where can you see? You can see here how you've got different widths in between your teeth. So you've got your finer one here, then you've got your medium, and then you got your wide. Can you see that? Hope everyone can see that. Okay, so what these tools are used for is to remove undercoat.
Yeah, remove dead undercoat.
Yeah, carding dead undercoat. So a carding tool, these are a type of carding tool. So carding means drawing out the dead undercoat and leaving your top
healthy coat in there. So they're not designed to just remove all hair, because dogs do need a certain amount of undercoat in them. And we can see, I don't know, you can see how
curve.
they curve, and it is like they have a little bit of a blade in there. So when you're using this particular tool, you need to be very careful when you're going through the coat. And I would say I take a long time when I'm using these, because they do have that I wouldn't say it's not a blade, but it is quite sharp, because it does taper towards a tip in there.
Yeah, it's kind of got some, like, it's hard to explain really.
But as you're going through the coat, they just gently pull out the hair compared to your rakes. I prefer a rake. I don't know why. I just do. Sometimes I feel like this can actually cut the hair, and if they're not blunt enough, you need them really blunt to help remove that dead coat. They can actually cut the top coat.
They can damage the top coat as well. So you
and I've seen a lot of coats that have been damaged through using these little guys. So when you do use these tools, you need to definitely be very careful, and you need to understand the type of hair you're wanting to remove from that dog. So if your dog has a lot of buildup of undercoat, then there's nothing wrong with using a rake or using a universal slicker, or the universal slicker with the extra long pins, than using these. So you really need to understand the type of coat, and you need to understand where the hair actually is in the growth stage of that dog's coat before you start using these. I love them, but you really need to understand. And I think, I can't remember who put it up. There was a post about someone had used them and they'd nearly made the dog bald.
Yeah, I've seen, I think it was a husky or something. If I remember correctly. You've got to be like, yes, they are designed to remove the undercoat, but they will definitely remove the wrong coat.
I find these are quite aggressive in what they do. So they're great, but you definitely need to keep watching the hair and making sure the hair you're removing is dull and it's dead and it's easy to remove. So if we have a look quickly, I just want to explain with these tools, and I'm not sure if you, I'm just taking over from your bit.
No, this is good. It's better with us talking.
So the
you're good.
the coat king with the de-shedding tool with where the teeth are further apart, I would say this is really great for dogs that are shedding heavily, or a heavy shedding dog. Whereas when they're closer together, this is going to remove the finer hair. So I would definitely not use this for a dog that has
going to a really big, like going through the actual heavy shed, probably before the seasons. You probably go for the wider tooth.
And a good example is if we're the same as a comb, the teeth are further apart, so it's going to go right through that coat. And the same as with these little, I don't know what you call them, teeth.
Teeth.
I would call them teeth. They are going to more likely to go through the coat than something that is closer together. And I mean, that's the same principle as our fine tooth. So when something is fine, it means that it's going to go through finer hair and it's going to remove that finer hair, whereas this is further apart, the comb's further apart, the teeth, it's going to remove.
It works the same kind of, it's the same kind of idea. And you could use your wider tooth one and then your finer tooth one if you need to. But again, as I said, just be careful, or as we both said, just be careful about what coat you're actually removing.
Definitely. And that goes for similar to your universal slickers.
Definitely.
The pins are thicker and they're more separated, so it's going to penetrate through that coat a lot faster. The same as with the wider tooth de-shedder as well as your comb. So, you know, there's fine. So it's a good idea on how
they actually
work and what coat types.
So someone's just asked about the rubber band. Yes, I have definitely seen this used, especially with some of the dogs that I've seen people use them on. Yes, so you can put a rubber band.
I don't have one to put.
I know, we don't. I'll put a photo up one day.
Yeah.
So you can put a rubber band across it. What that's doing is it's going to grip the hair even more. So you just want to be careful. It's meant to protect the coat. It's meant to grip the hair as you're coming through the dog. But again, just be careful that you are only removing that dull, dead undercoat and it's not pulling your healthy hair.
Yeah, and
out.
I mean, because I feel like the rubber band takes out a different sort of hair, but if you're going to do that, I would just use a different tool.
Yeah,
to be honest,
use a slicker and a comb.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Or I would grab out my rubber brush.
Yeah.
And remove some dead hair that way.
And thumb. I'm a big. We'll go through this on another video, but the finger and thumb technique is probably
So the purpose of the rubber band around the tool is to remove more hair, and I feel like it can remove too much hair. Like it can remove a little bit too much of that top coat as well, like that shiny hair. So if you are doing that, please be extra careful.
And maybe talk to the people that have used it quite a bit and really get an understanding of what is that right hair that needs to be removed. Yeah?
Like what breed are you working on the most? But yeah, and again, a lot of people use these for dematting.
Yes.
They're not a dematting tool, people. We have tools for dematting, but they're not for dematting. They're for removing dead hair.
It's not a blade on the edge of
the tool.
It's just the way it's. What would you say? The way it's
designed is to hook around and then remove that hair. So if you are dematting with that, it's actually going to really make the dog uncomfortable, and that's pretty big for me. Like if you're trying to remove a knot with this, like that's a big knot. Like
it's a big knot, isn't it?
Like that's probably time to go, you know what, I'm going to clip that dog down.
Exactly. All right, and the only other de-shedding tool that we probably want to talk about, actually no, we've got a couple more, but that is it's called a de-shedding tool.
And we used this last week on Shelby, who's passed out asleep.
Absolutely knocked out, passed out asleep on the ground.
A classic Labrador.
Shelby.
No,
she's not even interested. So this one here, as Mel said, we used quite a lot on Shelby last week. Sorry, we've gone to this camera. You can see. I'll try and get.
So they have little teeth coming down into the tool, and this again is great for short-coated breeds like Labrador. So if you missed last week's, you can rewatch it on our YouTube channel. But they're little teeth that when you move it through the coat, it just pulls out all those little dead flyaways that are in your dog's hair and probably around your house, on your couch, in your car,
everywhere,
on your clothes.
As you got hair all over your clothes. So that, and again, be careful of what coat you're pulling out. I don't know how many times we can say that.
And I mean, it's probably the same with all the tools that we're spoken about, is that don't overuse them because we don't want to irritate the skin, and just really watch. So if you are brushing your dog, I always say to people, maybe not with the TV on, because you're probably going to be watching the TV and not watching the coat. So it can be quite an aggressive tool if it's used incorrectly. The
de-shedding tool, yeah.
Dematters. Dematters. So dematters I quite like because they do tease out little knots in coat. So you're not going to overuse them. Again, you wouldn't overuse them like a slicker or a de-shedding tool. You would just use them to gently break up that knot a little bit and tease it out from the base of the coat, and then you would use your slicker.
Follow up with the slicker.
I've got a whole video on using, I think it's this one. I used
the mat breaker.
Yeah, I used in Summer's coat.
Yeah.
And it's a really good video, and it just teaches you how to break up the knot with the mat breaker, and then going through with your slicker, and then going through with your comb. So they're not if your dog is too matted, that's when it's time to get your dog clipped down.
You're only just working on small mats when you're using these guys. And the way they work is you would place I don't know if we can get, that's it. You place the end of the teeth behind the mat or into the start of the mat. And just work it through very slowly. We don't want to pull this through the mat. You're just going to cause the dog so much discomfort. So it's just working that blade through the mat to make it a smaller knot. Then you'd follow it up with your slicker brush. It
just helps separate that knot. And then, like Janelle just said, to then follow through with your slicker. But it is a teasing motion. So it's just lifting and just teasing it out.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it, a teething motion.
Yeah.
And the only difference between the two is the size, really, and the way the teeth are. So your mat breaker has the curve on the teeth. It is really good to use when you've got little knots around their face. It's a bit gentle. It's a bit easier to maneuver around the gentle
I prefer
areas.
not to use it around the muzzle and things like that. If the dog is matted or got knots around the muzzle, I'll use a slicker, or I'll prefer to just cut out the knots. They're so sensitive. It's a sensitive area.
They're easier. I find these a little bit easier to maneuver, really, than these big guys.
Some people swear by these, but some people swear by these. So it's just a personal preference, and depending on how many different breeds you groom as well. But definitely watch that video, because it is a whole video about using the tool and using it correctly, because I think there's a lot of people that just think that they can get one and demat their whole dog. It's not the case. It's just helps separate knots, ready for the slicker, and then after the slicker is a comb. Okay, so let's have a look at rubber combs.
This one here?
Yeah.
This one is quite popular. It is the Zoom Groom one. So we used this again on Shelby last week. So if you wanted to see it in action, you could go and have a look at that live. But the way it's the same thing. So it runs through, and it kind of works on as the rubber brush is going through. It kind of creates a bit of that static electricity type thing. It's going to pull that pull that dead coat out, and it all gets stuck in. You can use it. I actually much I actually love using these in the
A
bath.
I was just about to say the little pug Adam, the pug.
Yeah.
He loves it.
Loves it. They
yeah,
love it.
because it's
feels,
like a massage.
It feels amazing. And it really lathers up your shampoos that you use. And gets it right down deep into the
And
coat.
there's lots of different brands. So this is a different one as well, where it's got little teeth, little things on it as well. So
it's you can see it better on your top because I'm in pink.
Yeah, so we can see the little teeth that help remove any of that dead coat.
But yeah, it just runs through, and as the rubber brush is running through your coat, it's going to pull that hair out.
Okay, pin brush. Oh, let's get Dash back up.
Yes, Dash.
So we mentioned earlier about pin brushes. I use pin brushes a lot because of the breeds I have, and I've kept a little knot here specifically for our pin brush. And I use a pin brush a lot on Dash's crest and the top of his head because he does roll around a lot. And
hold on a second, we'll just get a better.
Just see if we can go up a little bit.
Just so they can see his hair.
So we have a knot in this area here, and it's really actually hard to separate. He gets lots of knots through here because he does roll around and sleep upside down. I don't think he hardly ever sleeps normal. No, I think it's always upside down.
He throws himself backwards.
So we have a little knot here. So I'm going to spray some coat conditioning spray in that. And then with my pin brush, I'm gently working through. So a pin brush, the pins are quite thick. They're really flexible. So they really move well with the coat. And they're designed not to break hair and
pull out hair.
Yeah, and pull out hair. So if you're trying to save coat, a pin brush is your best friend. I use a pin brush on my hair. Yeah. I love pin brushes.
Amazing on the side. Do the dog. Yeah.
Sorry, Neville. I use a pin brush on my hair.
He's going to be like, really?
Yeah.
I use the pin brush as well. It helps straighten the coat before you put your comb through, I find. Do you find that?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And we can still work through little knots and tangles other than a slicker. And the reason I wouldn't put a slicker in this area is because, again, I'm trying to save this coat and it is quite long. So a pin brush is going to work perfectly. Or if I am going to use a slicker and I don't have a pin brush, I would use a flexi slicker to gently work through, because I know it's not going to remove a heap of hair. The long pin universal, that's way too aggressive for this area. So generally use a pin brush or the flexi. So pin brush, again, is just a design to save hair as well as just remove any little bits. You can see it flying around. I don't know.
No, you can see it. I hope they can see it at home. Maybe.
And it's just gently working through that. So is there any questions out there, Janelle?
A couple of comments.
Oh, no questions?
Let me see. Yeah.
What about the stones?
The stones. We can talk about stones. We're just about to talk about some stripping knives, so we'll talk about some stones then, do you think?
Yeah.
And then we've got another one.
Rubber curry works well. Yes, because it's so similar to the curry cones. Yeah. Yeah.
And then we've got some pin brushes have covered pins and some open pins. Any consideration about which are better, the metal-ended or the covered-ended?
I prefer the pins that don't have the covers because I want the pins to actually penetrate through the coat, so we can see that.
When we're using a pin brush, we're not really getting right down into the skin. It's kind of starts... you're kind of lifting the hair up. You are going over the skin, but it's not as
Yeah, if I want protecting, then I'm going to use the slicker. Yeah. Whereas a pin brush, the pins aren't sharp, they're actually quite blunt, and it serves a different purpose. So I can see through here, I've removed that knot. So I can pop through my poodle comb first, and there's no knots through that area anymore. And then I can use my fine tooth comb, and then it really separates. And then we can see that it's separating really well. And there's a little knot, so I can use my pin brush and gently go through. And I like to hold onto the hair as well. So if I do have a knot, I really like to support the hair at the base and then work through.
Work that knot out of the coat instead of dragging it through.
And then with our combs, and then working down to our fine tooth. So I'll always use a comb after I use a pin brush or a slicker. I'll use a wide tooth comb, and then I'll go to the fine tooth.
I use the pin brush quite a lot while I'm drying the gun dog's finishings. Usually a feathering, so around the back of their legs, down behind the front of the legs, underneath their underline, ears. It really helps straighten that coat and make sure that you're getting the.
I use them a lot on Nellie, the little Yorkie.
Oh yeah.
Because it does separate their coat really well, and
while you're drying, it gets the dryer working well on the coat as well.
As you're drying, separates the coat really well. Okay, so stripping knives. So that's what somebody just asked about was stone. Yeah, so I would say stone would work the same as like your de-shedding tool. So the stone actually is quite, it's not rough, but it is a stone. I don't use them. I don't know why I don't use them.
I used to use them quite a bit at one point in time when I was doing finger and thumb work. I don't generally use it now because I find it can break the coat rather than pull.
I feel like it can stretch the coat. So when it stretches, then it can make it more susceptible to breaking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose it just depends on what technique you're really used of.
I don't think they're bad in any way, and if you're used to using them, that'd be fine. But yeah, I find
some people are so zippy with them; they're just like choo choo choo. Yeah, and I'm like, wait.
Yeah, but yeah, so rather than I'd probably prefer to use a de-shedding finger and thumb.
Yeah.
And
Did we have a question?
No, we've got a "This is awesome. Thanks for sharing." That's Matt. That's Matt from Perth. Nice to see you again. Talk to you again.
So let's quickly go through hand stripping. So hand stripping is when we're removing a hair from a hair follicle that is at the end of its stage in growth. So it's actually finished growing. It's detached from the bulb in the hair follicle and it's ready to come out. So hand stripping is completely, I say it's completely different to de-shedding, like using de-shedding tools. And they're usually, that technique is usually used on broken coated terriers.
Yep.
So, dogs, because there's other.
Other breeds,
So I love hand stripping. I love Welsh Terriers. So I'm a big, I love it. I love that you can remove different hair at different places that creates a trim. Yeah. And it's all from using stripping tools or using finger and thumb to gently remove those little hairs that are completely blown and ready to be removed. So I think that's a good explanation.
Yeah, it's a very good explanation.
Of hand stripping.
These are very commonly used with terriers, like with the broken coat.
Yeah. So if we look at our hand stripping tools, if you're not using a finger and thumb technique, our hand stripping tools I would say it's similar to what we have with our de-shedding tool that we would use on a short-coated dog. But they're small, and as we're using them, and I won't pull Dash's hair out.
Give me anxiety.
Yeah. But we just gently hold onto the hair and then just gently remove. So that's when the hair is at the end of their hair growth cycle, at their shedding phase. So it's kind of like a little knife, and you could almost hand strip with anything. Like you could hand strip with whatever you like. It's just that hand stripping tools make life a lot easier. If we look at the difference between these two hand stripping tools, one is fine teeth, and the other one, the teeth are a lot coarser. So coarse meaning that they're further apart. This one, which is a fine tooth, is it's a lot easier to use on ears, those more intricate areas, whereas one that is coarse is great for your jacket work, body, things like that. So the fine is more for your ears, the top of the skull,
down in the throat area, depending how your dog's going to go with it.
Yeah, depending on if your dog's used to the hand stripping process. I mean, because it can be the same as when you're brushing your dog as well. So, you know, sometimes dogs aren't used to being brushed with a slicker.
Yeah.
So
you got to see what they're more comfortable with and work with them as they get older.
Teach them that hand stripping is a process. So it shouldn't be uncomfortable for a dog, because again, it is hair that's at the end of that cycle. So I enjoy it. So there's lots of different hand stripping tools. So this is a really basic one. They're a good all-round hand stripping. And then you've got your fine, your coarse, and this little bugger, classic. These are great. These are like a good all-rounder. I think nearly every groomer has one.
Yeah. And the blunter, the better.
Yeah.
You don't want to work through with a really sharp
stripping knife, because it's going to cut the hair. It's not going to grip the hair and help remove it. So these can also be used in the same technique as your de-shedding tool. So you can gently, if Shelby would get up, we could explain it on her, but it's okay. But you can just gently move it through the coat of, like say, a Labrador, not a Bichon. Move it through the coat, and it can help de-shed any undercoat.
I would use stripping knives or the classics around spaniels' heads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When I'm doing more intricate work, just to start to card out more of that coat, whereas these guys can be a bit harder to use around their head and their ears and their cheeks,
because you do have a lot more control with a smaller tool.
Exactly. Sorry.
No, you're right. You're right. So we'll do some tutorials on hand stripping and explain that in a lot more detail, because I feel like hand stripping is almost a lifelong degree of learning. Oh my God, it's just incredible.
Still learning. It's crazy. The hand stripping stuff there's
crazy.
A lot to learn.
And you can definitely use powder when you're hand stripping with finger and thumb as well. So hand stripping is best done on a dirty or a grubby type coat, because you do need that grip to actually remove the hair. And the same as when you're using your de-shedding tools, it's a good idea to use them when the coat is dirty. Before it goes in the bath, or in the bath with the first shampoo on. Sometimes I'll put through, after I've used a de-shedding tool, I'll use a slicker with conditioner and then gently go through and work the conditioner through the coat, just to help, rehydrate and
Do we want to say
happy hoodie? I love happy hoodies. I'm like, as soon as someone they don't have one, I'm like, why don't you have a happy hoodie? So these are great. They go on. Dash loves his happy hoodie. He's tired too.
He's tired now.
So they gently go on, and they help minimize noise from the dryer.
Some sensitive dogs, when you're doing they're filing their nails or doing the
anything loud where dogs aren't used to that particular sound, I put one of these on every dog I groom. Like, I just think they're just the bee's knees. So although like poor Dash, but he doesn't mind them at all. So they just help hold those ears close to their skull, and it just helps block out any noise from the dryer and things like that. One of my toy poodles, Kiki, I can't dry her without one because of the sound of the dryer is so. It's not. I don't even have it on high. Even on a stand dryer, she still has like anxiety towards it.
Some dogs are just really. They can be sound sensitive, just like us, I guess.
Yeah. So I love a happy hoodie, and I think one of Honey, she goes on the back of a motorbike, and I think they put one on her as well.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So they are a really, really handy tool to have. So that was
they come in a small and a large also, so you don't have to don't just get a small and expect it to go over all of their heads. But definitely there's larges as well that helps with that.
Yeah, so these are all the different tools that we will be using during our grooming session. So whether it's a recorded session or a live.
Yep.
And I just wanted to go through all the different tools and the different sort of functions they can have, even though they're the same. A slicker is a slicker, but they have different functions to different coat types, different lengths, the same as our combs. So if you guys have any questions, and if you re-watch this and you're like, oh, but what about this or what about that, please contact us, because we'll definitely get back to you and help you decide on the best tool for your dog. So so if there's was there any other questions?
I think we just had happy hoodies work great for elderly dogs that are starting to lose their hearing. 100%. I find that the senior dogs definitely start to get a little bit more sensitive.
Yeah, definitely. I love the seniors. Like they're my favorite. I love them. I would have like a whole sanctuary full of old dogs. I just love them.
But as Mel said, if anyone has any questions, I've got to stop touching buttons on there. Any questions, just send them through, and we'll, be happy to help in any way.
Yeah. So
next week.
Next week we're
doing a puppy one.
Yeah. So we'll have a little puppy here. So we're just going to go through different techniques that are going to help you guys at home when you have a new puppy to help condition them to the grooming process. So on how to get them used to being on a grooming table, how to get them used to having their feet played with, their ears, nails, pads, sounds, and all
desensitizing them to all the different things,
all those type of things. So it's definitely one to watch, and just because it's going to be a really cute puppy.
He's pretty cute, yes.
So if there's no more questions, I don't think so. I
hope everyone enjoyed it. I think that was great.
Yeah, so again, if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate in asking us, and please
put some PDFs.
Yeah, and I do have a PDF. So what I've actually done is popped all these tools into a document, and you can download that on our website free of charge. So and please subscribe to our channel, because we'll have lots more grooming tutorials. And then until next time, happy grooming, and we'll see you same time next week.
Next Monday, same time.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys. See you.